Royal Robbins is revered as one of climbing's true pioneers. He is a Modesto native credited with changing the culture of the sport during the 1960s and 70s. Liz Robbins is the wife and partner of Royal Robbins. Like Royal, she is one of the pioneers of the early years of modern rock climbing. Liz is the first woman to scale the Half Dome in Yosemite. Tom Frost is a renowned mountain climber, environmental activist, photographer, and climbing equipment manufacturer. According to Royal Robbins, Tom is the kindest and gentlest and most gracious person I have ever met. There's one story in your book that fascinated me when I was writing it, is that you and your friends like to ride the rails just for the adventure.
That's true.
Yeah, and there's one story in there about you, two trains going in opposite directions, and you literally leaped off of one train onto the other train?
It looked pretty easy. They were going slowly, but I must say it was an eye-opening experience. They were going in different directions, so there was about a 10-mile-an-hour differential, maybe 5 miles an hour each. And it totally threw me, so I went up in the air, and when I landed and came down on my side and started rolling toward the back of the boxcar, and I just managed to stop myself before going off the end of the boxcar, in which case I wouldn't be here tonight.
That's what I was going to say. We're lucky to have you here. What did your friends think of this? Were they impressed, or they
I think they were impressed. They didn't say anything.
Yeah.
But I was impressed.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. The thing that you describe so eloquently in your book is about the Boy Scouts and how the Boy Scout experience, which continues with you today, but at that time really changed your life and led you on a path that brought you to mountaineering legendary status. Can you tell us about that?
Well, when I got out of incarceration, I decided I'd do something smart for a change, and I joined the Boy Scouts. And I happened to join a scout troop sponsored by the Los Angeles Police Department. It wasn't on purpose, but it happened. So my relations with the officers in blue after that became very positive. Once I got a reward. The reward was to be able to go up with a bunch of other scouts and spend 10 days with pack animals in the High Sierra, and that got me into climbing. So I owe the Boy Scouts a lot of gratitude.
But you've paid them back. You've stayed involved with the Boy Scouts up to this day, correct?
I try to. I do go out with them several times a year climbing, and try to pay back a little bit that way.
Liz, when we were discussing Royal's involvement with the Boy Scouts, you were very proud of what he's done, but you've been a part of this as well in loaning them equipment and helping them out with projects.
Well, I was mainly speaking about Royal in that case, in that he first started out with the Scouts in Modesto and elsewhere by just wanting to go with them and encouraging them to go climbing and going with them, which always meant a lot to the Scouts. And lately, when he isn't climbing as much, he's continued to be in touch with the Scout leaders that he has made friends with, and they just line up, and we get requests to put on our calendar dates where they're going to go and use the equipment that we try to make available to them.
Can you tell us about your first mountain climbing experience? Was it with the Boy Scouts?
It was with the Boy Scouts. We climbed something called Fin Dome up in the Ray Lakes area. It's in the High Sierra, about it's at least 11,000 feet. The thing that struck me is that the passes in the High Sierra are higher than the highest mountain in Southern California, which is about 11,500 feet. So they're way up there. Fin Dome wasn't very hard, but for a youngster out of the streets of Los Angeles, it was very real.
Yeah.
Very real. And getting to the top was heady. It went to my head.
Uh-huh.
I kind of ran down, jumping from ledge to ledge, and I almost got carried away with my newfound ability and jumped too far, but I didn't, luckily.
Yeah. You changed the climbing culture in the 60s and 70s. Can you describe what it was like before that and what differences you brought to the climbing culture in the 60s and 70s?
Getting to the top is nothing. The way you do it is everything. And so the way we did it became very important to me, not getting to the top.
And what was the way, how was the way you did it different from previous climbers?
It changed over the years, but when I first started, the thing we did was to take out all of our pitons. And this was different from what had occurred in the Alps, where they left the pitons in place. The Alps were studded with pitons. And in America, pretty much the rock had no pitons. This was the way of doing things.
Your historic climbs of Half Dome and the Salothe Wall of El Capitan and the Muir Wall are legendary. That's what we're celebrating that took place 50 years ago and how that changed the whole climbing culture. What are some of your memories of that?
Well, in 1957 we did the first ascent of Half Dome, the face, and that was big. And then in 1960 we did the second ascent of the nose of El Capitan, and the first ascent had climbed up the same way, but they had taken a year and a half total time and a total of 45 days on the rock itself. So we did it in 7 days with one push, and the idea was to do it in one push. And we thought it might take 10 days, but we got up in 7.
So before, a climber would go a little ways, or a team would go a little ways, then they would go back down into the valley, and then the next day maybe go a little higher. And so that's why it took 45 days or whatever.
That's true.
As opposed to your group that was doing it in one push, as you said.
One push, yes.
In all of the climbing and all of the great ascents that you've made, is there one that would you say was the most satisfying?
I would say the Salothe Wall has to, the southwest face of El Capitan has to have that distinction. Wasn't the most dangerous. That distinction belongs to a route I did in the Alps, but it was the most satisfying.
I know that at one point in Yosemite you were on a rescue team. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Any stories there you can share with us?
Well, I was rescuing my friend Warren Harding and Galen
Back to
Rao.
Warren.
Yeah. And I thought at the time, I've been lucky. I've never needed rescuing, but I've been in places that I might have got stuck, but we didn't. And we were lucky.
Do you consider yourself a risk taker?
Been very careful. And I don't think I'm a risk taker, no.
Okay. You had to make a transition from mountain climbing to kayaking. And you describe in your book how your arthritis was the main reason for that. And you've said that in your book that arthritis is a positive thing in my life. Why did you say that?
Well, I said it because it got me into kayaking, which was, otherwise I wouldn't have done it. I would have stuck in with climbing, which is my first love.
Sure.
But kayaking was challenging and very fulfilling.
And now you're writing a multi-volume autobiography.
That's true.
How far along are you in that?
I finished the third book, but we still have to do the fine edits and add the pictures.
All right. I've learned that being a part of the Rotary Club of Modesto is very important to you. How did you get involved with the Rotary?
Well, I got involved because Liz's dad, Earl K. Berkner, was a Rotarian, and he had 40 plus years of perfect attendance.
Wow.
So he was a Rotarian that you look up to. And when he got older, I went and started going to Rotary meetings with him to assist him if he needed it. And I became a Rotarian because of Dad, and I stayed on after he passed on. I stayed as a Rotarian because I liked the ideals of the Rotarians. They wanted to do good.
The thing that brought my father so close to Royal was that his way of looking at life and his ideals and his integrity was really so much like Royal.
My understanding, Royal, is that you have introduced fellow Rotarians to the High Sierras and to appreciating the environment and some of the things that are so important to you.
Well, we've done auctions, and the auction was a trip to the High Sierra. Typically, we would go in with pack animals into the immigrant wilderness and climb there. And I know we went to Chewing Gum Lake. It's a funny name. I don't know why it's called Chewing Gum Lake. But there's a rock nearby that's we named Rotary Rock. And so I led the way to the top of that for Rotarians.
Oh, what a great experience that must have been for you.
It was good.
Yeah. Liz, can you tell us how you first met? How did you first connect with Royal?
I was working with a young man at the Ahwahnee Hotel who was a climber. He wanted to know if I'd go out with him one night after work and go to a campfire where we would meet up with the climbers. And that was where I first saw Royal and where I first met the climbing community. And
Camp 4.
That was Camp 4.
That was Camp 4.
Joining me now is Royal Robbins climbing partner and mountaineering legend himself, Tom Frost. How did you get started in mountain climbing? How did it become a passion for you?
It's one of those things that come in with us, I think. I was always interested in climbing, and back then it wasn't mainstream.
What do you remember about that first climb with Royal?
I just remember I really loved climbing with Royal, and one reason is because I really loved climbing. But the other reason is because of the style of climbing that Royal embraced. Had a great love of Mother Earth and the partnership that we have with her when we climb. The first time up El Cap on the nose climb was such a huge impact, such a big experience for me that I've never been the same since. It's not what you climb, but how you do it that counts.
You two were pioneers in the term, using the term clean climbing, right? Leaving the mountain the way it was before you started.
Royal was actually the first proponent for clean climbing in this country. And he picked it up on his trip to England, I believe, where they climbed with passive protection, which they called nuts, because they were actual machine nuts with a sling through them, the first ones.
I want to close today with a statement that author Peter Croft has written about our three guests today. He said that in the long run, climbing history has never favored the cheap hero, the one who shortcuts. The truly great climber often must take the path less taken. And to make the grand strokes, he or she is usually guided only by themselves. Royal Robbins, Liz Robbins, and Tom Frost have followed their path to the point where their presence dominates the history of modern mountain climbing.